Good morning, everybody. I am your grateful neighborhood addict named Connor, and this is today's Daily Reflection. July 18th, grateful for what I have. During this process of learning more about humility, the most profound result of all was the change in our attitude toward God. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 75. Today, my prayers consist mostly of saying thank you to my higher power for my sobriety and for the wonder of God's abundance, but I need to ask also for help and the power to carry out His will for me. I no longer need God each minute to rescue me from the situations I get myself into by not doing His will. Now my gratitude seems to be directly linked to humility. As long as I have the humility to be grateful for what I have, God continues to provide for me. Hi everybody, I'm really excited for today's video because I think I have a really good one on my hands for you guys today. So anybody who knows me knows I'm really big on gratitude. I love gratitude. So what is gratitude, right? The gift of gratitude is noticing that the cup you thought was half empty is actually half full. Now, I'll give you a little story. The happiest, bubbliest person I ever met, her name was Kat. She was a tiny little thing, about 5 feet tall, and her personality was so big and so joyful that one day I just had to ask her. I said, Kat, what's your secret? How are you so happy all the time? And she just looked at me and said, well, Connor, happiness is all about the little things. And then she just walked away. Like that was the answer to my question. And I thought about that for the next 10 years. I still think about that every time I enjoy a delicious meal or a hot shower. So gratitude isn't just a nice feeling. It's an evidence of humility, which we've been hitting from every angle for at least the past 8 straight days. But pride says I deserve more, and humility says, look how much I've already been given. So the reflection doesn't say that gratitude comes first. It says humility comes first and gratitude flows from it. And what flows from gratitude? Happiness and peace. Yes, please. I'll take a double serving of that. Thank you very much. So it all begins with humility. So humility gives us perspective. Perspective produces gratitude. And gratitude produces happiness and peace. Notice it's the perspective that changes, not our circumstances. So a real simple application would be, instead of asking, what am I missing or what do I want? Ask, what do I already have that I would have prayed for a year ago? So for me, the answer is easy. I'm sober, I have a relationship with God, I have purpose, and I get to be useful. And giving is also an act of gratitude because it says, what I have is not only enough for me, it's enough to share. And I wouldn't know. I'm a sponsee, not a sponsor. But I think that's the heart of what step 12 is all about when you hear things like you only get to keep what you give away. So I'm so grateful to be able to help people with this YouTube channel. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you this morning. So let's move on to the 7th tradition, right? So I thought this would be a good place in the structure of the meeting to put this, but the 7th tradition states that all meetings should be self-supporting and decline outside contributions. This is the part of a traditional meeting where we would pass the basket for donations to pay for coffee, rent, and supplies, but that component of mini meetings is coming soon. Once the website is done, I'll point you guys there for anyone who wants to contribute to the operating expenses for this channel to keep things running, which only exists to help you and that I pay for out of my own pocket to do so. But remember, we need you much more than we need your contributions. So no pressure and just keep coming. So let's move on to addiction and recovery. How did my addiction teach me this lesson? Well, I wasn't ever grateful for shit except the next bag. It was always consume, 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 and next, next, next. Nothing else. I never stopped to smell the flowers or enjoy the sunrise and notice the beauty of the world around me. It was recovery and establishing a relationship with God that taught me that. So let's move on to the 12 steps. Why does today's reading belong here in the 12 steps? Well, today's reflection belongs in step 7 because gratitude is one of the natural results of humility. And humility is the essential component of sobriety as a whole. Remember that the last couple of days we've been talking about that primordial axis of addiction recovery, pride and humility. So step 7 asks us to humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. But before I can ask God to change me, I have to stop believing that I'm entitled to more, that I deserve easier circumstances, better treatment, or a life without pain. Pride keeps an inventory of everything I'm missing, and humility notices everything I've already been given. So, boom, another shortcoming and character defect down. So, what is this step trying to teach me? Well, step 7 is teaching me to stop demanding that life conform to my will and to become willing to let God change the way I respond to life. Gratitude helps me do that. It shifts my attention away from what I think God has withheld and toward everything He has already provided, will provide, and will continue to provide. So why would this reading help someone working this step? Because removing a shortcoming is not merely losing something negative. It creates room for something better. So as pride is removed, gratitude can grow, and therefore happiness and peace can grow too. As self-pity is removed, perspective can grow. And as entitlement is removed, contentment can grow. So I'm not just asking God to take something away from me. I'm asking Him to replace my old way of seeing the world with a healthier one. And that helps make life better across every domain. So how does this prepare me for the next step? Well, step 8 asks me to be willing to make amends to the people I have harmed. Gratitude prepares me for that because it gets me out of self-pity and self-centeredness. Instead of obsessing over what other people did to me, I can become grateful for the opportunity to repair what I did to them. So humility allows me to see my part, and gratitude reminds me that recovery has given me the chance to make it right. So let's move on to faith. I think this is the longest section today. Gratitude can change your life if you let it. That's what I think God is trying to teach me through this. It changes your vision, right? Because it allows you to see what's all around you that you've been blind to, like the beauty of every sunrise and sunset or the stars lighting up the sky at night. It's also the answer to anxiety and depression. Gratitude is happiness grounded in something real. And I find that incredibly hopeful because depression is the bane of my existence, man. And the only thing that gets me through the pain and makes it easier is gratitude. It doesn't always make the pain disappear, but it makes it bearable. And sometimes I have to start at the very bottom. You know, every morning when I wake up, I say, "Good morning, God. I love you. Thank you for another day of life." And sometimes when I'm down, I have to kickstart the list. You know, I'm grateful for the roof over my head, for having air conditioning in July, for having food in the fridge. And that forces this reframe of suffering into something that's tolerable. And I am definitely grateful for every single day that I'm not in pain. So I am so grateful for God's love and having a relationship with Him. You know, honestly, I'm so grateful that I answered the call when asked. It's the best decision I've ever made in my life because everything good and worthwhile flows from His love. Our love, His mercy, His grace, which covers every area of our lives, compassion, and even miracles. And it's a free gift, a gift that never changes, just like Him and His character. Always there, constant, and completely unconditional. And all we have to do is notice that it's there and choose to accept it. So one takeaway to carry in today that inspires hope, we now have 2 new tools to handle pain, humility and gratitude. And I find that incredibly hopeful, especially because pain is what drives my addiction personally. So that to me means freedom. So a quick note for the newcomer, the most important person in the room, growing gratitude is like working out a muscle. It takes time. Just keep working at it, and someday you will have an oasis of peace and happiness in your life. And just keep coming. More will come in time the more you spend in these halls, I promise. And a question to leave you guys with, what is something in your life today that you once prayed for but may have stopped noticing? Thank you so much for listening today and for allowing me to be a part of your journey. I am your grateful neighborhood addict named Connor, and I'm wishing you another day gratefully sober. Until tomorrow.